Welcome into the Tour Coach, everybody. I'm your host, Tony Ruggiero. First of all, we're excited to be joining the Golfer Gang Network, which is a collection of podcasts just like us, just like ours. It's all people who love the game, love the journey. They've got some great stories to share. And here on the Tour Coach, you're going to hear a collection of conversations from the people I meet around the coaching and teaching world. And every story has a lesson, and every lesson is designed to help you enjoy, love, coach, and play the game of golf better. And we couldn't do that at all without the support of our sponsors, especially Mitch McConnell, Buick GMC. The folks there have been with me through it all from the very beginning, as well as Shrixon Cleveland Golf. It's been a hell of a run with those folks, coming up on almost 24, 25 years. You got Bushnell, Vineyard Vines, our newest sponsor, Epic Western. Their tequila drinks often fuel some of our late night podcasts. You need to go on epicwestern.com and just look at what they've got to offer. Order some in for yourself. But these next Tour Coach podcasts are very special to me. I did this once before. In going through the old Dewsweeper archives, my old friend and former producer of the Dewsweepers, Ralph Carroll, dug up some of the old series and conversations that I used to have with my longtime mentor, Hank Johnson, who was a Golf Digest Top 50, Golf Magazine Top 100. He was a PGA Teacher of the Year, and in my estimation was one of the most brilliant people I ever was around. It's no secret we had a interesting relationship, crazy up and down, but he's so responsible for everything that I do today. And this is going to be taking these old conversations from the Dewsweepers that I had with HJ on a series he did on power, and we are going to replay those. But first, before that, Wayne Flint, who both him and I came up under HJ, we take the old radio interviews and kind of discuss them and put them in more modern day times. So super excited to deliver these power episodes with HJ, some insight into what he thought, how it's aged, how it can help your game, and how it's influenced us as teachers. And if you're a teacher or a player, this is well worth the listen. Once again, thanks to all our sponsors. Excited to be part of the Golfer Gang Network. Hope you enjoyed these podcasts. I'm excited to bring them to you. It brings back some nostalgia, but lots of good times coming up trying to learn how to coach and teach this crazy game. So stay with me. It's an exciting episode. It's going to help all of you play better here on the Tour Coach. All right, so joining me here, this is going to be fun again, and I've been having an absolute ball here on the Tour Coach, going back through these old archives, as I mentioned to you before, of the stuff that we used to do on the old Dewsweepers golf show with HJ, on the tee with Hank Johnson. And each time we've done these, bringing back some of the old segments, I brought in Wayne of the Drano, Wayne Flint, who Wayne and I were with HJ with seemingly forever in our career. And obviously he passed on, I think it was 3 years ago, a month or so ago, wasn't it? 3 years ago in September. I saw some pop up on the phone the other day, but we're continuing the power series that he did, and I'll kind of go back over it and Wayne pitch in anything, but it was a 4-part series, on how to create power in the golf swing. And I think he said one thing, Wayno, in this third issue that I thought was great was or maybe it was the 4th one, but where he said, explaining it as simple as he can, but still in a way that gets all the information. And that's hard to do at times, especially when you're making something that's complicated like this. And so, the first piece of the puzzle really dealt with a lot of setup and how to be balanced at setup, and how to wind and load your body going back. The second episode obviously dealt a lot with pivot. The first 2 dealt with setup and pivot, winding and loading your body up. We talked a great deal about thinking of this like elastic loading. And so I kind of want to start there. This third episode is really dealing with sequence and the sequence out of the top. And he said another piece in there that I thought was brilliant. And, listen to these things. I'm sure like you remember some of these things that he would say and that you heard all our times on the tee. But he talked about that he thought that great players and tour players did the sequence of these moves a lot better that a lot of golfers had all these components in their golf swing, but didn't do it in the right order or didn't sequence it out of the top
Right.
was good. And I thought that was brilliant because, like you and I, we've spent a lot of time on the tee, whether it's at Highland or Mobile or at Old Palm or Fred or anywhere we've been. And man, you see, we put these things in a lot of players and they get a lot of stuff in there that's really damn good, but they don't hit it like a tour player.
Right.
And it's these finer movements. So let's, you don't mind, let's talk about your thoughts on that and some of your thoughts on the sequence out of the top. And, HJ, go ahead and talk about what you heard, what you remember from his teachings, and how do you apply this, if at all, and where are we with it still today?
Well, Tony, I think, I see exactly what you said. I see people, they get to the top and they may do a really good job of getting wound up and using the elastic loading, like Hank used to always call it, and getting their upper body wound against their lower body to really create, the ability to have some power. But
Right.
Then out of the top, they're in such a hurry to get their arms and that club going as fast as they can, thinking that speed out of the arms and club is the power producer. And I'm not saying speed's not good. I mean, don't get me wrong. I mean, speed is a good thing if it's in the right sequence.
Right.
And, what I see people, they're all trying to get their arms and that club back to that ball as fast as they can. And, the best players in the world, they're trying to get that club to lose that race to the ball. I mean, they're leaving that club back and they're leaving it alone. And they're trying to get their body back in a position where it can continue to turn all the way into the finish and then transfer that power out through the arms and ultimately into the club. And, I think what people do out of the top is they may get themselves wound up really good, but then they're so fast out of the top trying to get that club back down to that ball that they destroy the elastic windup that they had. They give it all away. And, getting people to try to learn that slow, whether it would be on like a little balance board that, would, move down on your trail leg, on your backswing, and then down on your front leg, on your forward swing, to teach people how to shift or, whatever the case may be. A great swing catalyst, is great to show people when it's happening and how it's happening. I know you use that all the time. It's, I've got the same balance board that I use occasionally. But getting people to slow down and learning to do the sequence in the right order, excuse me, which was, something that Hank preached on a lot, as you well know. I mean, get people to slow down and learn how to do it, train their bodies how to do it, and then add speed after the motion is learned. And I see people all the time trying to get going fast, but they get the wrong thing going fast.
Right.
Instead of learning how to make the right thing go fast, which makes the other things go faster. You get your body to learn to do it correctly and then learn to do it faster, which then produces more speed out into your arms and ultimately more speed into the club.
Yeah, the other thing I thought that was really cool about this, especially as we're dealing with recreational golfers, but even with tour players, we deal with this. People, I'm going to use a right-handed golfer just because most, obviously big sports is right hand. Like everybody's in such a hurry because they know maybe they hang back or they don't get to their lead side or their left side, that they get to the top and then they lean over there and they just kind of lean with their upper body over there.
Right.
And I thought the cool stuff about this was, I've told you this before, as I listen to these old HJ things, and especially I really wish he could have hung out in the hitting bay with like me, you and Colby working, because he would have loved the way we help teach people to unwind doing body stuff, right?
He really would have liked that, yes.
Yeah,
I mean, that would
he
have been
would have
right
liked that. And I think that, this stuff that you're going to hear, I thought, I told you before we came on the air, and again, I'm going to let everybody know that I'm going to put some videos up on YouTube on our DewsweeperTV that's going to match each of these 4 episodes here. We're going to get them up this week so that you can go look at them and see some examples. But the idea of that, getting to the top, and then what he's talking about, when you get to the top, the first thing that goes back is that lead knee goes back towards the target or over your shoelaces. I think he talks about.
That's exactly right.
That's come to be what, you and me and Jackson, when he's here, we're in a hitting bay and we're working with a player, and Colby's there. We talk about separation, right? To me, that's that separation between lower and upper. And, it's interesting the way he talks about it. But, there's some great drills that we use using a resistance band. I know Colby, and we had somebody in a bay the other day, and you feel like that lead knee is pushing out on that band out of the top. You do a wonderful job using that pressure board. I think that Sheftick pressure board, or there's a bunch of other ones now, is a great way to do it. But again, it's hard to get people to do it with their lower body and just not lean their whole upper body over there.
That's exactly right. I mean, one thing I learned early on, way back in the Golf Digest days, from HJ and from Toski, and those two especially, was that the downswing had to be a shift followed by a turn. Well, I think most people are trying to turn so fast out of the top that they lose the sequence of the arms getting back in front of them and then delivering it to the ball, and they get that sequence out of whack, and they end up turning around their back leg. I mean, they end up spinning their body out of the way with all the weight moving into their trail leg, instead of the shift getting into their front leg, and then the body being able to turn to the finish to produce the maximum amount of power. So, that's what I see a lot. And, trying to slow people down to get them to where they can shift and feel the weight get into their lead foot and stay there while they then turn. I heard Chris Como say the other day that he liked to use the downhill advantage. I thought that was a great way to say it. And I always, I'm down here in Alabama in football country. So when I get people on that Sheftick board and I get them to shift into their front leg, their left leg for a right-handed golfer, and the board is running downhill, they then have an easier time of turning their body because they're using the downhill advantage. And,
right.
I thought that was a great way to say it. I'd not heard that before. And I commend Chris for that. I thought that was great, there's a lot of ways to communicate stuff. And that's what I'm always trying to learn from great teachers, is how to pick up other ways to say a lot of the same stuff that we all know and believe in and think is important.
Well, and I think too, the cool thing for me is I don't think you listen to the old information. The information is incredible, is wonderful, right? Now we've got some new ways, like you talked about, with swing catalyst or force plates, 3D stuff to explain things, that might have made it easier back in the day. But again, I think this is wonderful. And I thought he did a wonderful job too. Of course, I asked the question, but it was like, what are some of the misses that people will see if they're not doing this correct? Right. And I loved what he talked about. One, about doing slow motion swings. And I loved what he talked about with the segmented swings, where you would go to the top, you would put your knee back down, then you would make sure your trail elbow got in front of you, in what he called preparing for impact, and having people hit balls like that. And I think if you could do that, like he alluded to, and you're great. I mean, I've seen you a zillion times take people in that locker room at Highland, make them do slow motion stuff without a ball. I'm not saying they like it. I'm just saying they got better, right? Remember Dr. Johnson being in there looking one day, and you're like, what the hell? But, but again, I think the point of this was, if you struggle with a two-way miss, I think that was his thing, was if you don't separate and follow the correct sequence, that club gets behind you. If you stay back, the club's going to release quick. And if you slide and get in towards it, then you're going to shove it and hit the big right or the big block. Right.
No, that's exactly right. I mean, but again, slowing yourself down enough to learn to do it in the right sequence. I mean, that's how you can you quit hit you if you can get people doing that, you get them to start the ball more in line. They certainly quit hitting quick pulls to the left for a right-handed player and quick big old push blocks to the right.
Yeah.
You start to see them start the ball more on line, and the ball starts to react the way we want it to. And
Right.
and then you try to build the speed from the right sources from that point on.
And then you just, you have a bunch of, and then stuff if you're hung back on your back leg, right? A lot of it's because you lean over to your lead leg and then you back out of it. I just thought this was really cool. I thought it was a lot of great insight. I thought the drills, the exercises to do, especially the slow motion stuff, where he said, hey, if you're really trying to affect change, you've got to slow down. And we've talked about that on here. And, we've had Dr. Bonacore on before talking about how the brain learns, and, all of that stuff came from HJ too. Our desire to try to figure out how the brain learns, how to help people get better sooner. But, like you've got to slow it down. And I thought, man, there's some great exercises in here. There's some great drills. And just the explanation of how to unwind. And then again, the fact that you may have all the pieces in the golf swing correct, but if you don't execute them in the right sequence, you're not going to hit the golf shot you want. That's kind of to me the message that he laid out in this whole thing.
Well, that's a big deal. I'm trying to always, and you've watched, me and you've done a lot of stuff together. You've watched me put pieces together, try to put pieces together, and then it's kind of like finishing a puzzle, getting it all in the right sequence. That's when you can really see the picture of what the puzzle is going to be. But you got to get all the pieces in there together, and then start getting them in the right sequence so you can really see what the golf swing is going to do.
That's exactly right. So, having the right pieces, knowing the sequences is the key that HJ explains. And it's not just for power, it's for being able to control your ball flight. So everybody listen up. This is segment 3 of Power. Fantastic part of this series. Super excited, Wayne. I've enjoyed the heck out of doing these with you.
It's been fun. It's been a lot of fun.
And so you're going to find more stuff on our YouTube, DewsweeperTV, explaining each of these segments, and we'll get some stuff from Wayno in there as well. But stay tuned for Going on the Tee with me and HJ, going back, guys, this is 18, 20 years ago on PGA Tour Radio. It's been a while, so I'm a little more gray than I was when we taped this. But anyways, Wayno, thanks for sitting in. The rest of you are in for a treat.
Thanks to you, T, always.
We go on the tee with HJ. Welcome back into the Dew Sweepers, everybody. It is always a thrill for this part of the show, as we're educated and we learn from the master of instruction here at the Dew Sweepers, Mr. Hank Johnson. Hank, how you doing this morning?
Tony, I'm just doing great.
I'll tell you what, I know everybody out there is looking for more distance. In the past couple weeks, you've educated us in part of a series on power, and we're going to continue that today. I believe this series we're going to talk a little bit about storing the windup and starting down.
Well, we've kind of gone in a progression here. We talked about the need for a really solid setup that would support a good windup going back, and then we talked about how to get the body and the arms and the hands to the top of the swing where they're wound up and coiled and ready to release down through the ball to the finish. And we talked about that in terms of accumulating energy, winding up energy. Now the key is to store that energy or save it until the right time to release it, and that's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about starting down, and we're going to talk about what happens to start the downswing. You ever get that question?
Hank, I get it all the time, and we've talked about this before, and I know Dew Sweepers out there everywhere are excited to hear this question answered, because one of the most frequently asked questions I get from students and from people here at the show is, what starts the downswing?
Well, today we're going to talk about going from the top of the backswing down to what I call a delivery position, which is really where you deliver the blow from. And you can think of that as maybe halfway through the process to get back down to the ball. But there are two critical things that I believe have to happen from the very top of the backswing in order to position you to release all that power that's been built up in the backswing through the ball. And you got to save it until after you get these two things accomplished. Now, from the top of the backswing, the first thing that happens, and these two things really happen simultaneously, your left knee goes back where it was at address. It goes back over your left foot, and it's critical to be able to make that movement with your left leg without any unwinding of your shoulders. That leaves the load or the stretch or the coil in the middle part of your body to use to hit the ball with. If you let your shoulders go at the same time, then you release all that energy that you've built up before you get down to the ball. So you keep your shoulders turned, and you move your left knee back where it was at address, and that stores or saves the energy that you created in the middle part of your body and the big muscles of your body until you get down to where you're going to actually deliver the blow from. Now, the other thing that has to happen simultaneously to this, I believe, is that the right elbow has got to move back in front of the right hip where it started. So you're putting those two elements back to where they were at address so that you can effectively release all of the energy that you've stored through the ball. You have to keep your shoulders turned. You have to keep your wrist turned and cocked while you put the left knee back over the left foot and the right elbow in front of the right hip.
You know, Hank, one of the interesting things is you're replacing your knee and your elbow back where they were at address, but you're doing it in a way that keeps the power stored up and the energy stored up that you've built up during this backswing pivot we've discussed the first couple weeks.
Saving that power until the right time in the swing is really what sequence is all about. It's a matter of releasing the elements in the proper sequence so that you get the benefit of them. If you move the left knee back into the same position it was in at address, and you bring the right elbow back in front of the right hip without uncocking your hands and wrists and without unturning them, you will have arrived at the delivery position. And when you get to delivery, the weight needs to be flat on both feet. Knees and hips will have turned to a square position where they started, and the shoulders will still be turned approximately 45 degrees to the hips so that your trunk is still wound up. Left arm is still across the front of your chest, and your hands and wrists are still turned and cocked, and they're located at approximately waist high. And the reason I continue to refer to this as the delivery position is that's the position from which you actually hit the ball. So you go to the top, bring everything back down to this delivery position, and then you release it through the ball to the finish of the swing.
So what you're trying to do, Hank, is you're trying to move everything back down here ready to hit the ball, and that's what we're going to talk about in the next segment. So you're going to make everybody wait till next week, teasing them a little bit here to find out what's really going to happen when they hit the ball.
Well, a good way to think of this sequence, and this will be familiar to you, is the sequence for shooting a gun. You know, the proper sequence to shoot a gun is ready, aim, fire. So you fire last. And what we're doing is getting ready and getting aimed at the ball, and then we're going to fire last. If you went fire, aim, ready, it would be the same things, but in the wrong sequence, and it wouldn't be very productive.
What would be a result if a person didn't start the downswing with the correct sequence? What are some of the results that a Dewsweeper could see out there, or a way to tell them that possibly their sequence is not correct?
Well, let's talk about the two elements that we have identified as proper in terms of what needs to happen to start the downswing, and let's talk about the left knee first. Let's suppose the body starts unwinding before the left knee gets back where it should be. Well, then your left leg is not in a position to support your forward swing, and you end up making your forward swing pivot around your back leg. And those players that do that tend to fall back away from the target as they swing through. The club comes from the outside. They kind of wipe across the ball because their body is turning around the wrong leg. So the effect of not getting your left knee positioned to accept the forward swing would be a pivot around your back leg and a throw out of the club to the outside of the line and a wiping type of impact across the ball. Now, if your right elbow doesn't get back in front of your right hip, then it will cause one of two things to happen. Either your right elbow will run into the side of your right hip and the club will rapidly close and you'll hit a dive hook, or to avoid that, you'll let your hip slide toward the target, and because there's no rotation, the swing will be too much in to out, and you'll just hit a big block push. Now, the most damaging thing about that, Tony, is you've got a miss that can go either way, and they're 50 yards apart. But those are the two misses that would normally occur if your body starts to rotate back through the ball and you start to release your arms and hands and wrists before your right elbow gets back in front of your hip. So the key, I think, is to get your left knee back where it was at address and get your right elbow back where it was at address, which is in front of your right hip, before your body unwinds and before your hands turn and uncock.
One of the interesting things, Hank, that you talked about that I think will help people when they go to the website and they read this is that, you hear people all the time just say, I'm not getting to my left side, I'm not getting on my front foot. But you mentioned the fact that if you don't put your left knee back to where it was at address, it's not going to be possible to do that. So you could be, if you didn't know that and you didn't seek the right help, you could be trying to do something that you're just not in position to accomplish no matter what you try to do.
Well, I think there are a lot of different ways you can try to get to your left side incorrectly. And we probably don't have time to talk about them all, but the most current way that I see is the left hip starting to shift toward the target over the left foot. Now, you notice I didn't use the hip, I used the knee. If you put the knee back in place, the hip can stay centered between your feet, and then when it starts to turn, it's in a good position to really create a release through the ball.
Now, how do you know? Are there some keys some people can do out there, any kind of drills that a dew sweeper could do to practice the sequence, to rehearse the sequence of the downswing?
Yeah, I think the best way to do it is to be willing to make some slow motion rehearsals without hitting a ball. And that's something that all good players finally evolve to so that they can actually train themselves to make the movements. So what you do is you set up in your good solid setup, you wind up correctly, and then independently of doing anything else, very slowly, you put your left knee back where it was and your right elbow back where it was, and once you've established that position, then you just unturn to the finish. But it's like making a three-part swing, up to the top, down to delivery, through to the finish. And if you're willing to rehearse that in slow motion until it becomes a little bit natural and then start trying to hit less than full-speed shots with it, you can learn to do it much, much more rapidly. But if you try to do it at full speed, thinking of all these things and trying to do all these things at full speed, you're probably not going to have any luck, and you're just going to continue to make your same old swing.
Hank, it's funny, we have emails come in along this line all the time, but this segment's no different, that it gets back to the fact that if you want to improve your golf game and you really want to get better, you have to do things at slow speed or without the golf ball, or drills that aren't going to help you just repeat the same old golf swing. It's tough to do, and I know most dew sweepers and everybody out there want to just go on the range and beat balls and get better, but it just builds once again on the same thing that you've talked to us about all the time here on the Dew Sweepers, about how the things that you really need to do to get better.
Well, if you think about all other athletic skills, all athletes in all those other disciplines learn the movements in slow motion. In other sports, it's called walkthroughs. You can label it any way you want, but you slow the speed down so that the accuracy can improve until you get reasonably comfortable making the movement, and then you put the speed back in. But if you don't take the speed out, there's very little chance that you'll make anything other than your old swing.
Hank, great stuff. I appreciate it once again, as always, and you've got everybody teased now for next week as we'll deliver the final installment in Power, which is releasing the power.
Well, we're going to tease them a little bit, but I want to remind everybody it's all on the website, so you can read it in sequence. And next week we'll put up the last segment in this Power series that we're doing, and I hope it really helps everybody.
Hank, thank you so much for helping everybody learn the concepts to help them build power in their golf swing.